Hello, and thank you for stopping by Britain's Hidden History. If you are interested in finding out the version of British history that used to be taught in the schools, that used to be widely accepted, and is known as the authentic history of Britain, then you have come to the right place. Were the Britons descended from Troy? When did the Trojan Wars happen? Are the lost tribes of Israel alive and well and living in Wales? Is it possible to read hieroglyphics using Welsh, using Cymroglyphics? The birth of Western Christianity, did that take place in Britain? Was the Trojan War in Cambridge? The myth of a Roman invasion, and of course the stories of King Arthur, the historical King Arthur, and there's two of them. We look at the works of Wilson and Blackett, people like Fomenko, Velikovsky, all these different sources, Collins Beaumont, Anthony Thom, looking at the ancient history of Britain, how the star mounds, how things are laid out by astrological terms, all the way back to ancient Assyria, right up until about the 7th, 8th century, well, up until Norman times, really. And we can even look a bit at the myth of that. So, if this sounds like the sort of thing you're interested in, please join in. Join this rapidly growing community. There are so many people out there researching, coming back with amazing finds, both from the books and from the places. So, Thursday evening, 8 o'clock UK time, there's a show every week, includes interviews with people out there finding things, loads of fun and games. It's a nice light-hearted channel, so please keep it family friendly, be polite to each other. And then most days of the week, almost every day now, there's a video up, a little bite-sized chunk of history for you to think about and the evidence that goes with it. So please welcome aboard, be active, join the chat groups, join the Facebook groups, do the whole thing, get involved, use your grey matter and find out what is going on with this Britain's hidden history.
Hi and welcome to Britain's Hidden History Live Show. Today we have a new Arnie video to open with and more from Keith Price about the hidden archaeology at Penn Castle, showing some of his finds on a walk up the path created by the theme park development. And then Keith again in our main feature with Bob Morgan and David Moseley in part 2 of the Great Saxon Invasion circa 551 AD. So straight away we'll play Arnie. Thank you, Arnie, and keep your videos coming. You need to practice anyway, so why not film yourself in the practice session? Now, we've heard that the auction for the Morganwg micronation and their fundraising event has been held, and here's a message from Olwyn. We are pleased to announce that the books were won with a £69 bid by Kerry from West Glamorgan. We'd like to thank everyone who placed a bid. The money raised will go towards the micronation being represented at Microcon in Belgium, an international micronation conference where we will be able to meet other micro-nationalists, to form alliances, learn from other more advanced micronations, and be represented in the press conference. Lloyd, one of our founders, has also been selected to speak at the conference. Speaking of Lloyd, I've attached a photo of him. It's his birthday today, and he has had some lovely presents which he's very pleased with. Glamorganwg has a People's Council meeting followed by social gathering this Wednesday, 3rd of May, 7 p.m. at Caerphilly Workman's Hall. If anyone who wants to find out more and see what we do is welcome to come along. There are details of upcoming workshops on our website too. And the website address is www.glamorganwg, spelled GLAMORGANNWG.org. Pemblau hapus, Lloyd, happy birthday Lloyd, and best wishes for the day and a successful conference. Well, Keith Price got in touch with me during the week to say that he had more photographs to show us about stones he found on the path to the summit at Pencastle, a truly interesting place filled with archaeology. So why aren't archaeologists beating their own pathways to the area? Here's our video of the chat. Hello. Well, today I'm back talking with Keith Price. Welcome, Keith.
Hiya, Paul.
And today we're going to fill in some of the gaps maybe from part one of our talk about the Saxon Marathon. And so today Keith is going to give us some more background on Pencastle.
Yes, it's I think the impression we all got generally is that the only castles in Wales were either Normans or other ones, that are much earlier. Obviously, this was not an ill fort. This was a bona fide castle. I'm going to show you the reasons why. Paul, this is Pencastle, what I envisage it would look like. I've taken different castles and adapted them on Photoshop just to give an impression of what it looked like. What we've got to realize is that this, along the defending wall here, that's 335 meters, which is over 3 rugby pitches. This was enormous. This is the dry moat, which went round, and then you have the boundary wall, or the protection wall, which went around as well. This is the keep and the palace, which gives the impression that it was not only used as a defense, but a home for someone. Just go on. This is what is left there now. And you've got to admit, it's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's massive, isn't it?
So if you look at that, what you got, there's the soil that went up there on my. So they've dug all this out. That must be 100 foot down there into the hollow of the moat. And what they've done, they just built the walls up then and through. All the soil that came out, they pumped into on top of the donut there, and I work it out about 150 feet. So the keeps were built with cellars, dungeons, whatever, and then they filled the soil up. Just go on. This is the road that I found all the stones on. You can see the tower there now, still there. So this is quite a steep path. There's the moat, the dry moat. And there is the keep. I worked that out at about 150 by 120 meters. Vast. This was not a small castle.
Anybody ever done any archaeological dig to find the footings?
No, no one. It's never. It wasn't found until recently. Although we knew it's there.
Yeah.
No one did anything. It was reported years ago that there might be an Iron Age fort, but no one's found anything. It's been investigated by Glamorgan, Gwent, the history people.
Yeah.
And they've come back saying there's nothing there. They said it was similar to other mountains in the area. So I've looked around, I can't see any donut-shaped mountain near. Anyway, this year, I just put a couple of notes here. You can see this is just a stone hanging on that path, nothing else. And there's some strange marks on it, see it?
Yep.
And then we got flat areas. See the flat areas?
Yeah.
That tells me that it was, I think that's the back. What I said is, I suspect this is the back of the masonry stonework for an arched window. Right? If you look there, see it? You can see the arch. Now, if you turn that over, I expect the arch would be there.
Right.
And so with the lots of the churches and that type buildings, they would have false work, and although it's arch, there's not arch, you can't see through it, right? But that's, you know, it's a characteristic that's quite common. It's the way they did fenestration. I'm asking any of our viewers if they see something. I mean,
yeah.
If they can recognize this, for example.
Yeah.
I think it's an 82 and a 7, I don't know. But
I see what you mean. Yeah, it looks like
yeah, I don't know. So anything they see, and just make a note of it and come back. You know, this main reason is to let people know what's happening, you know, and to gain experience.
What is that over in the top left? It looks like a nail.
Well, it could be, yeah, it could be. Flat surface again. What it does show, you can see the arch there, look. You can see the arch and then it goes up again.
Yeah.
See it?
Yeah.
Now, what it's telling me is this is not ordinary stone.
No.
This is telling me it's workstone. Now, you know, that's without doubt. What you got here, just move this out of the way, put it over there. What you got here is ribbed surface. You can see
pretty straight lines, aren't they?
Yeah. Don't know what that is. I got an idea as I go on, because I'll find more. This was a strange one.
It is, isn't it?
Tell me what that is, Paul.
But it looks as if you got a badge on the wall.
I don't know what it
Maybe
is.
they painted it on or something. Painted it.
I honestly don't know. I mean, I don't know what it is. I thought it was an egg, actually.
Egg, yeah.
At the time, I thought it was an egg. You know, a dinosaur's egg or something. I mean, it's that. I never seen anything like it. So I'll just go on again.
It does look carved, doesn't it?
It's strange. I mean, there's stones around it. If you look, a skinned stone around it.
Yeah, they're attached to it.
I'm just hoping someone will say, "Oh, that's this or that." I don't know.
Put it on a wall and you could paint shield on it, like a
Mm,
coat of arms, couldn't you, or something?
who knows? Oh, right. This is another one I found. And it looks like the wings of a cherub. I said it can't be an angel because it's pre-Christian. What I believe anyway. It's pre-Christian.
All the Old Testament is filled with angels, and that's pre-Christian.
Well, could be, but it looks like it's been worked that way.
Yeah, it's a pattern.
It's a natural thing,
Yeah.
I don't know why I picked that one, but maybe someone's got an idea. Who knows?
Those wings of an angel you're talking about, has that got crevices filled with the black ender stuff that we thought was?
No, I haven't come near that yet.
All right. Looks like a wings again. It looks like something for sure.
Okay. Right, this one here. This is that. That's a springing point of a cathedral type arch. Right there. That's what it is. It isn't anything else. So, let's get out of our heads that this was a hill fort. This was not an hill fort. You don't build fenestration into an hill fort, do you?
No, you'd have to be a castle, wouldn't it? Bona fide.
It's a castle, a magnificent castle. That I can say that is definitely a springing point. I have no qualms, that's a springing point. That is not natural. That is not natural.
No.
That's worked. That's been worked. I envisage an angel or cherub of some sort, because it's what it is. Unless someone tell us better. I'm hoping someone look at it and say, "Oh, I've just been down to church so and so. This is what it is." Boom,
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this, Right. Again, this is just another stone. I can't see anything really on it, but I picked the not bad ones, but the ones on purpose so they don't show up.
It's definitely a dressed stone of some kind, isn't it? It's been squared off.
Right. Now this is a cornice from the stonework where it hits the roof. You will not have this on a hill fort.
No.
This is classic master masonry. Not only that, it's a corner. So what you've got is this one coming the other way. It's an internal corner. Internal corner. So that. And this black, we've talked about it before.
Yep.
I believe is the residue of the comet. Now, why it isn't on rocks and things, it must have been protected for 1,000 years. Who knows?
Yeah, in the crevice, covered over.
Yeah, covered. It's only now, it's been in the trees for 100 years, because that was a plantation.
Right.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I've got an app on my phone. Wonderful thing. It stops me pulling out good plants instead of the weeds. I take a photograph of a weed, which I think is a weed, and it tells me it's a potato or something, so I don't put it out. It's comical. But it's very, I thought I'd try it on this.
Yep. Great thinking.
So
lens up. Yeah.
It comes up as lunar meteorite silica morphobs, polyphobs. I don't know.
Can't get better than that, can you? Comet dust.
Well, it just looks like residue.
Yeah. Silica.
But you know, that isn't scientific at all, is it?
No, but
at least it stops people. Yeah. I've got these. I would love someone to come back and say, "Oh, I'd love to have a test on this." You know.
Yeah.
It's there if anybody wants it. But it's really good, I think. You know. Oh, this was interesting. This was interesting.
Alabaster.
There's Rob there, and what we did, we walked down the mountain, and Rob found lots of stones, as a Scotsman says, which are found or been found when the IMAX go through and pulls all the ground away, or the caterpillars, because they're not ruining the site, they just going through it, you know, which is normal. And that, I did the same with that. It's strange stone, it's all cracked, and you know, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. So I did the same. I thought I'd do a stone lens. I do this lens app. It said it was alabaster.
Wow.
Alabaster.
Yeah. They got some of that occurring in Penarth. And they make beautiful stuff out of it.
Yeah, but it's not natural here, is it?
What's it doing on a mountain where you are?
Yeah.
Because down in Penarth, it's in the cliffs.
Yeah.
The whole cliff, you know, the seashore cliff, it's got this red alabaster in it.
Now, if it's alabaster or not, I don't know. You know, again, I'm sorry, but I don't think these will be accessible now anyway. They're all gone. All this is gone.
Is it? Already?
Yeah, I think. Well, this was a couple of months we've done this last year. This one, this is either granite or marble. Anyway, it's not found in Britain. It's usually found in Brazil, India, or Italy. What is it doing stuck on a mountain in Wales?
Yeah, it's worked. You can see that's worked.
I took a photograph of I got a bit of marble in my conservatory. I took a photograph, it's identical.
Well,
so maybe someone's conservatory up there, I don't know. But it's fantastic. These were stones as well I had. It's just very strange. Again, if anybody got an idea, let us know. Again, I got that sparkling. See the sparkling stone?
Yeah, yeah. And then look at that curve there.
I just picked them up on that path. I haven't dug anything. It's very important you don't dig things up, you know, in the area. You don't be accused of damaging anything. So these are all loose stones. Oh, there's the stone there, the cornice. Right, this is fantastic. Again, that goes into the corner there. See it?
Yep, perfect, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what it's made for, right? But can you see that?
That's your leaf, isn't it? Yeah,
that's a vine. That's a vine. right?
Yeah.
And like I say, you don't get this on hill forts. You don't. So, let's seriously stop calling it hill fort, right? And then I came to this. Now, what do you think that is?
Which one? The one on the right?
This one, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. It's got two grooves in it. It's like the other one, isn't it?
Yeah,
They seem to be converging, those two lines.
yeah. Very, very, it's obviously been worked. See, you can see the
Yeah.
flat.
Because either join stone or you could put wood on there, couldn't you, somehow?
Yeah, well, that's the reason. That's the reason I assume that they would fix then it onto a wood of some sort. Usually it'd be they use mortar. They use the mortar and things like that. I thought it might have been one of these.
Yeah, it does look a little bit elephantine, yeah.
Well, who knows? The trouble is, I wish I turned it over.
Right.
It's gone now, I expect. We won't get in anyway because it's all fenced off now.
Really?
Yeah, so. But that, but I could be, I may be wrong.
No, the eye would be in the right place, wouldn't it?
It's made to measure there, isn't it?
Yeah.
These are the boulders that we were coming out of the area around the bottom of Pencastle and way down,
Well, they make ideal foundation stones, wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah. These,
Straight edge on that.
It could have been positioned stones, circles, could be anything, couldn't it?
Yeah. That one on the right, though, has got a straight edge.
Well, I don't know what they're for. Again, yeah, there's a straight edge there. Some look like they've been standing stones or put there purposely. They're too big. They're not normal. I've never seen stones, I guess, on the mountain, walking along with stones, not unless they're standing upright or purposely put there. And this was, there was about 3 piles of the stuff.
Well, they're definitely making sure there's no archaeological record left behind, aren't they?
Oh, I've been nothing. Look, I'm not blaming them, right? We're going to blame ourselves. We allow it to happen, don't we?
Yeah.
Simple as that. Don't go blaming anybody. Blame yourself. Get up and do something about it. That's what we're going to do. This is a back of something, look, but there's something there. You can see something there. I say it's some design flower or maybe a small bird. I don't know. But there's something there. And it all depends which way you look at it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Again, if the viewer can find out, be good. Or got an idea, Oh, this is the back of one of the stone cornice. And you can see a nail over there, see it?
Yeah.
So that was fixed into the timber. So just proves, it's done, or everything's purposeful.
And that's top part section of that has been carved, hasn't it?
Yeah.
See the grooves in it.
Yeah. Again, I just think that this was part of that window structure. If I go back a bit, I just think it could be that part around there,
All right, yeah.
Or whatever. That's something like that. But, I'm just wanting people to have a look and find out. What I say is, please, if you find or see something that I may have missed, please let me know. Just post a message or BHH, thank you for your help. Catch my 4 films on my channel, Keith Price, King Arthur.
Yeah, I'm very interested they were as well.
Well, most of this stuff's in it, but it's important that they have a look. The message that I want to portray or get out is that this was not, definitely not, a fault.
Yeah.
This was something special.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time today, Keith.
Special.
And that's a very interesting series of pictures, and I'll be including them on the overall combined part 1 and 2 combined video that I'll put out as a standalone production.
I'd just like to thank you, Paul, for your help and encouragement, because we can all just sit here doing nothing, but I think you'll have to stop encouraging me now. I've been on too much.
No problem, Keith. My pleasure. Thanks very much. Thank you, Keith. Amazing work, what he's done there on this. And you've said no one is trying to stop the theme park development from going ahead. Interested historical parties just want the potential archaeology protected. And now, as I've said every week, everyone is welcome to contribute a video. And we're still asking for new work urgently. Angela or myself will act as liaison to publish them to Britain's Hidden History YouTube channel. If you publish straight to the Facebook group, as some people do, let us know that you'd like us also to put your video on the YouTube group channel. Just message us by finding us on the Facebook group page under members. If you've got video content or a PowerPoint presentation in your video, we'll hopefully include it in the Sunday show. And I say every week, it's because we like videos. Well, now for today's main presentation. We have part 2 of a 2-part presentation with Keith Price, Bob Morgan, ably assisted by David Moseley. We join the presentation with Bob Morgan continuing where he left off in part 1, talking on what Keith calls the Saxon Marathon, a full-scale invasion which resulted in an estimated 5-week campaign across 50 miles of West and Mid Glamorgan around 551 AD, and Bob adds his insights as a surveyor, utilising the topography of the area to add to his viewpoint. David Moseley brings his military experience to the table, and thanks to Paul Hartell for providing video of Mynydd Baden and creation of sounds of early medieval battle. I'll upload both parts as one standalone item to the YouTube channel, hopefully during the week, and as I've said, I'll include Keith's talks on the stones that he's found. So here's part 2. Well, today I'm with David Moseley, and if you look carefully, you'll also see Llw Archen in the background. I'm with Bob Morgan and Keith Price. And
Hi.
David is our military expert. For today, we'll be talking about the campaign around the Battle of Baden and the marathon of the Saxons, as Keith calls it. And Llw Archen was actually at the Battle of Baden.
Once you start then going back to the written records that we've got, the written records are quite clear that Arthur hid some of it. Arthur did set a trap, and one of the things in doing that and setting this trap was that he hid his men behind the hill, and he took them off at this point here. From here to the Bulwark, you can see one another, albeit that you've got the valleys in between. But if Arthur put his men down, some of his men down here, they can't be seen. They're hidden from the Saxons, who are up on this ridgeline up here. And they're also they put these. You've got these entrenchments here. What I believe is, and again, it's in the written records. It was in, I think it's in, not Gildas, it's in Geoffrey of Monmouth, which is one of the later ones. But what Geoffrey of Monmouth says is that the Saxons at the siege of Baden, they were not in a hill fort, but they were on the hillside because they were confident that their higher numbers that they had compared to what Arthur's men had, or what they could see Arthur had, they didn't need any further protection. So the night before the battle, they were just camped out on the ridgeline up here, which is why I believe that you have these entrenchments here. They're protecting the ridgeline here and protecting Arthur from coming further up the road. And these entrenchments here, I believe, would have gone all the way across the ridgeline at that point. And the Saxons were all out here. And at this point here, there were still Arthur's men still besieged in the bulwark and not giving out. And as soon as Arthur appears on here, the focus for the Saxons then is Arthur. And then ultimately what happens then is, so they meet down here then at Mascarplough, and you have the battle area down here. Here's where the fortified residence is, and to my mind, that explains the situation more, and it also explains what happens next, because Arthur, they meet and have the battle. Arthur's hidden. Arthur hid some of his troops around here, and I think that those troops came round from this side, coming up these slopes here, which is where the battle all took place around here. Some of his men were coming round the side of Mynydd Baden. The main advance was then up the ridge, where he was fighting his way up the ridge. And then what they did was they forced the Saxons back to this point here, where again they started then chasing them up the British trackway and following then your dot by dot up to Cairo. Yeah. So instead of you have Arthur being chased up the trackway. In my mind, it's got to be the other way around. It's Arthur chasing the Saxons up the trackway to Cairo.
I think it's an excellent theory.
I know. Well, like I say, I've just put it out there as to. I mean, there's no real proof of that. But apart from, if you look at how these entrenchments are aligned, and this is where we need David's input. It's quite clear that there were two sides faced off one another here, one facing east and one facing west, basically. So it's a question of who was where, which side was on the east, which side was on the west, and in my view,
but we would be on the east, wouldn't we?
Yeah. Yeah, in my view, we've got to be on the east,
right.
which means that you know the dream, you know, all the bits and pieces in the dream start to slot together. Then because Arthur gets all his men, they come across the plain, they all congregate at Ockmore, they all march up the photograph up to the Moneybaden, where they're going to be there for the battle at 12 o'clock, and then they get to, and the siege then is, you know, Arthur relieves basically the small force that he's got at the Bulwarker. And those men then obviously then tie in with Arthur and start chasing the Saxons up to Cairo. Now, I think that's a more, to my mind, it's more logical, but yeah, this is where David's military, you know, sort of skills will come to play.
I didn't, to be fair, that is a brilliant theory, and I think you're 90% right on it. You know,
Again,
I like your idea about the second lot coming over from the Somerset, or third or fourth, who knows? And it then they all landed up in Margam, ready for the battle.
And again, you know, when you look at it, you know, the Saxon landing site here, you can see one of the panty sites is marked on the map there. There's two actually on the larger scale maps, and I put them there, and you can see what I say here. When you look at these locations, look, Arthur and his guys now looking across the river Neath. These guys are the other side of this little hill.
That's right.
So that what you can't see what they're doing. You can't see how many numbers. You can't, you know, how many precise numbers and things like that. And this other panty sites, then there's two of them in the same location. You're in this little valley here. Again, you're putting all your men in here, and they can't be seen from the sea, from either the sea or from across the river Neath. Yeah, so I think that's the reason for those two names.
Yes.
This is the route that I originally thought that the Saxons would take to get to Moneybaden, which we discussed last time. And you got the Kevin Syson up here. And one of the other confirming factors for me on Kevin Syson is this is the Lidar of Kevin Syson. And if you look very carefully, you can see straight line there. There's a trapezoidal line there where I got the arrows things.
Yeah.
And it's not a hedge line. There's hedge lines here, and there's a road here that you can see on the Lidar. There's this faint trapezoidal outline there, which I believe was the Saxon camp.
Yeah, it's quite possible.
And then again, you know, this is it. We're then coming up from, this is the Margam Hill Fort. You're coming up to the first fort there. There's the enclosure there. You can't see my finger. You know, so you've got Margam camp there, the first fort. There's that enclosure there. That's quite a small one. So, but it's important because it actually is where the line with this line here is this road here is the track here is the British track, and yes. Then there's a Bulwarker. Now, when you look at that, if you were coming up from here, you get to this point here, and you've got to go up this little valley. I forget what the valley is. You know, the river is now. There's a small little stream in there, but once you go up from that enclosure, you're going up a steep bank. And you're up on top, and you're higher then than this one here. And this one, to me, has never been a good defensive location as a hill fort in itself, because once you're up here, you're higher, looking down at it. It's there really, I think, because this road here and this now bridleway here is an old track, and I think what that is, that the Bulwarkers there is guarding that track. Like this one here is guarding this track coming up, and then they're not on the high points. They're guarding the track rather than being hill forts per se. And again, if you look at the contours, these are the entrenchments that are there today. And that's it. I believe the Saxons were coming down this ridge line here. And as I said, what you can see by the contours that if you were down here, you're down behind the high point of the Moneybaden Hill. So if you're up here, you can't see them because you're hidden behind the hill. And that's what the part of the trap that Arthur sprang was, that he hid his men behind the hill. The Saxons thought he didn't have as many men as he did. They decided to attack because they thought they had the benefit of numbers, and they didn't. Now, the other thing I looked at was, okay, how many men can you get in these hill forts? I came across a book where it was basically looking at, it was a guy looking at Roman forts, Roman forts, Roman marching camps, Romans, or forts, marching camps, and temporary camps, and things like that, and working out how big they were and how many men you could get in them. And basically, the conclusions that he was coming out, it's a book called Roman Marching Camps by Steve Kay. And what he's coming out is basically saying that when he analysed all the Roman camps and forts, it was coming out at an average of about 690 men per hectare, because you've got to allow for tentage, internal walkways, latrines, cooking, all this kind of thing. So you can't just cram 1,000 men into a space. They've got to have room to move, they've got to have room to sleep, they've got to have room to eat, and they've got to have latrines. So when you analysed all that out, it was coming out at an average of 690 men per hectare. Well, when you look at the Bullwalker, you've got this small inner area here, right, which is the main enclosure, and that's only 4 hectares. At 690 men per hectare, you're coming out at it's coming out at 966 men. You could get 1,000 men in that small enclosure there. And if you were looking at the bigger, enclosure, which is going all the way, following it all the way around. Now I took it as far as this because I thought it must go further than it you would see today. If you take that, you could get a maximum of 3,600 men in there. So, if you had that kind of numbers, and you were we've already seen that you can't get much more than 20,000 men coming from landing at Crumlin Burrows. I don't know. Would 3,500 men be able to hold off an army like that? I don't know. I mean, that's something again that David might have an opinion on. But then,
unless they didn't want to hold them off. Maybe the plan was always to bring them out.
Well, I think the Bullwalker comes into it because they're all of the written, I'd say, if you go back and look at the primary sources, all the primary written things, every single one of them comes back that there was a siege at Baden. And Geoffrey of Monmouth in particular makes it quite clear that it was the Saxons who were being besieged by Arthur, not the other way around, which is what I think is the logical thing in the scenario we got here, if this is indeed Mount Baden, is Mount Baden, because we got the dream stuff here, which is what Alan Wilson basically believes. So, and again, there's a certain logic to this. Again, you've got the plain of the Vale of Glamorgan. Arthur sees all the guys landing over at Crumlin Barrows, gets all his troops, starts mustering all together. They come up the old Roman road across the plain of across the Vale of Glamorgan, across the plain, head for Ogmore Castle, and then go up towards Moneybaden and the Saxons up the road. Now, the issue we have with the dream is that it is a dream. So perhaps the interpretation and perhaps what's being said in the dream doesn't follow the normal logic. And if you look at it and read it all the way through, there are certainly some surprises in it. David, I know David did some work on this as well when we last discussed it with Ross. I'm looking at the tents and encampment area here. That's, in the dream, it says that for a mile from the ford, either side of the road, Arthur's men were all camped out. And one of the comments in there, in Geoffrey of Monmouth, is in the dream, is that they were surprised that they would never seen so many men in such a small space. Now, what I've done then is actually measured the tent and encampment area and the troop assembly areas. And if the blue area where they're tented, where the dream says that they're all camped out, if you apply that 690 men per hectare to that, there's nearly 24 hectares of area there, and that would equate to it could hold on this Roman basis 16,000, 17,000 men. Now, in the dream as well, they cross the ford, and Arthur gets splashed, which is where someone crossing the ford splashes him, and they assemble the troops in the troop assembly area, which is coloured green there. And again, coincidentally, that is about 27 hectares. So again, you could get 19,000, 20,000 men assembled there. Now, on that basis, we could be saying that Arthur had 20,000 men. We're also saying that Saxons had about 20,000 men if they landed on Crumlin Burrows. They couldn't get many more than that in one wave of landings.
But do you think they landed,
which I find quite interesting.
Do you think they landed more after, like you said, they got to Margam, stopped, and waited for troop?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that for the Saxons to do what they were planning to do, I think they would have pulled every man they had out. Yeah. Now the question is, sort of how many men could they have? Certainly there were battles where in old times where they did have 100,000 people, participating. The issue I think we've got with the Saxons is we've seen why the rivers are probably one reason why they come by boat. It's a surprise. It could be a surprise attack. The big issue with it is how many ships and boats did they have? Did they have enough men that they could? Did they have enough boats that they could get 100,000 men across the Severn? And you couldn't do it in a prolonged operation. You couldn't take like a month or 2 months to do it because by that time Arthur could get enough men to push you back into the sea.
What if you run them? Maybe there was six journeys by each boat.
Well, I'm going to say, as soon as you do it, that's why I think that the target was Margam, because I think that they were going to come across with a bigger force there. It might not have been the 80,000 to make it up to 100,000, but it could have been like 50,000, and they were trying to get them there in 1 or 2 waves, rather than the 5 or 6 or they would have to have done at Crumlin Burrows. No. So to me, there's a certain logic there which I got it in my mind and I can't get it out there. And I might be completely wrong, but it just seems logical to me.
Can I just add a point there?
Yeah.
What Bob said about the landing beach and the boats. There is an ancient method. I know the Greeks did it. If I can just get this up, say this is your beach sloping ground, and you land a boat on it.
Yep.
And that's disembarking, and you land the next boat next to it. That's disembarking, but you can also land another boat tied
behind it,
and this becomes then the jetty. Yes. And the soldiers just keep marching across the boat onto the ground.
That's a good point. And on that basis, then they could land more at Crumlin Burrows.
Yeah, but in a small area, a large amount coming in.
Yeah. But the real logic is what you said right at the beginning, David, is that if you land on Margam Sands, you're into the plain, and
Yeah.
I believe that the plain to me is what the Saxons were after. It's what the Russian, what the Romans were after. They were not.
Yeah.
They were not
Fertile
hills.
ground, fertile country, and everything.
Yeah, it was a
you,
fertile country, and the fact that you're on the coast and you've got the trading potentials.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be able to hold it with your enemy up on the high ground next to you, continually harassing you.
Well, yeah, but that I said is that to me is what the standard Welsh tactic is. You know, you go back up into the hills, and then you come down in a series of guerrilla actions and harassment actions. And to get to a point where you can force them back.
I think they would have been aware of that, and they're establishing a huge bridgehead. They wanted to get a high ground bridgehead to defend taking over that low ground, to protect the flanks. But that then became the battle up on that high ground.
Yeah.
And very east-west rather than north-south, as we see with the embankments. There's one more point about the embankments. British ones tend to be 3 bridges, and everybody else is 1 or 2.
Right.
Ours tend to be 3. What we've built on the west coast of Ireland, what we see around Glamorgan and across into Britain, England as well, there's a lot of British defences were always 3 rows of ditch and hill, then with the stockade on top, on the inner one, and like pikes laid out facing on the slope, the tangent of the slope, facing outwards on the outer 3rd row.
But again, I go back to the written sources, and I said there's when you start looking at the primary sources, there aren't many. But if you and the one that's got the most detail is basically Geoffrey of Monmouth. And if you go back to his description of the battle, it starts out as a siege with Arthur basically. It's the Saxons being sieged, and then when they he mentions then the Saxons occupied a hill close by that served as a camp for securing their numbers. The hill alone seemed all the camp they needed. So he's saying the Saxons were not in a hill fort; they were just out on a hillside or a ridge. And then next morning at dawn, Arthur with his army climbed up to the top of the hill. He lost many men and engaged in hand-to-hand combat. But then he describes how many thousands of Saxons were slain, and the Saxons then took flight. But the important thing in his description, which is different from what the scenarios we got going here, is that Arthur then orders the Duke of Cornwall to pursue the Saxons, whilst he hurried off in the direction of Albany. It says in the source. But the Duke of Cornwall then, accompanied by 10,000 men, is what Geoffrey says, instead of pursuing the fleeing Saxons, rushed off to their boats to prevent them being used to escape. So Geoffrey Monmouth is saying that it was a boat landing. And then at that point, once he secured the men, he left some men then to look after the boats. He then started chasing the Saxons. But Arthur wasn't involved in that chase. Arthur had already gone off. He'd left the field, and it was the Duke of Cornwall then, according to Geoffrey of Monmouth, who were then so chasing the Saxons from then on.
If they'd done that, let's look at it a bit. Maybe he's right. If the battle had started and it was coming to the end of the battle when Arthur left and the Duke of Cornwall went to the beach, which left no other place for the Saxons to go. Yes. Along Ilamach.
Yep. That's why I'm looking at this. I'm thinking there's a lot of sense in what we're talking about here, because that seems to me to fit in with these written, the very few written descriptions we got. you can actually then sort of interpret them in what we're looking at here, and you can actually see how it could be carried out. You know, so
he couldn't go east.
They would go
west.
Yeah, they would have to go up that track, Keith.
Yes.
Yeah, they would have to go up that track, and then the Duke of Cornwall then chasing them all the way around.
So what you're saying is, when I was saying Arthur, they chased Arthur up there, they just were forced up there.
Yeah, no, I think it's the other way around. I think it's the Duke of Cornwall, Arthur's men chasing the Saxons all the way up there. Yeah. And it could be where Arthur's gone off, and he's gone back, presumably, to either it would either be Caermelin or Caerleon, which were his big bases. Yeah. But it could also be that he's gone back to Rhys-Ison.
Yes, to prepare.
And then they're pushing him. Then their job then is to push him all the way round, and he's there at Rhys-Ison to get them at that end.
So I think what you're saying is that a lot of the Saxons were killed, but there must have been about 20,000 going up Eilimoch after. Really.
Yeah, well, it's in all of the written records again, it says that the Saxons had more men than Arthur's, and so if you do the calculations here, Arthur would have had about at most 20,000 men. So the Saxons should have had more.
Yeah, substantially more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the battle, I must admit, you really done that well, and I couldn't argue with any of that. That was really good.
We go back to that one picture with the map you just had, Bob, on that one. Take a look what's just above the ford. It says remains of a cross.
Yes.
And, you know, Arthur was said to have put the true cross
on the army. Yeah. So
is that anything connected?
Well, the thing about the dream was the mainstream when they interpret it is basically the dream starts in Paris, and the mainstream view of it is the descriptions they're given are all up around by Welsh pool, and I can show you that. I've got that. Yeah, here we are. Because what's mentioned in the thing is Arthur comes across the plain to the ford of the cross. Now there is a very important ford of the cross up near Welshpool at Buttington, where there was a battle. In the dream, it also said I think in the dream it also says they're going to Caer Dingol, which is this hill fort on this little hill here, and Caer Fadden is mentioned as the battle, Baden Hill. And the mainstream, one of the theories the mainstream pointed out is that it would be Breeden Hill. Would be so Arthur comes across the plain to this ford at the ford of the cross, and then they have the battle on top of this hill here. The issue with that, I think, is that the plain, as far as I can see it, is on the east side of the River Severn, rather on the west side of the River Severn, and that is Breeden Hill, So the battle is supposed to have been the siege is all about taking this hill fort on top of here. But that's just one of the mainstream ones. The other big one is that's a ford of the cross on that one. The small flat island that's mentioned is supposed to be this little sandbank here where Arthur was sat whilst he got splashed. So this is where the mainstream tend to push it, because there was a famous battle at the ford of the cross in later times. Lidar Castle's another big one, which is not far from where I am now. And that's this guy here in this book.
Battlefields of Britain.
Alfred Byrne and the Battlefields of England. he's a military guy who's looked at all of these old battles, including Mount Baden, and that's where he puts it, because at Hillfort there, because you're on this, you're on the Ridgeway, a primary route, and Arthur's men then would have been coming from the west and the north, coming down here, and he has it that this is Hillfort here. And the battle would have been fought down on these big flat fields down below the Hillfort, and the Ridgeway here, the main primary route west-east across the country at that point, runs directly below it. The downside to that is you would think that the Ridgeway would be defended. He's got the defence all taking place up on top here, and Arthur besieging this Hillfort, but the actual main route, you would have thought that they would have had a place where they defended in front of that, if they like on the British Trackway, where you've got the entrenchments in front of it, protecting him from attack from the east. You would think if they were protecting from the north, that they would have had a defence in front of the Ridgeway rather than behind it. Because if Arthur took the Ridgeway, he's got control of the main transport and transport route then.
Yeah, and then lo and behold, back on the picture of South Wales, you had a Ford of the Cross. That's one of the downsides of
Walton Blackett's theory is that there is no historic Ford of the Cross. I've got it down there. This is where Alan was saying it's got to be here.
Yeah.
Because the other descriptions say that from the either side of the road for a mile, from the ford is where they were camped out. Well, this is the only ford it can be, if that description is to remain true. So that must be the Ford of the Cross, but it's not. There's no old maps or there's no old anything history I can find saying that was ever called Ford of the Cross. And then you've got another Ford. You've got that other Ford up there, but then you do have a cross remains. So could that be the Ford of the Cross?
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And the dream of Rhonabwy, after the battle, he goes to Sengerith.
It goes in my copy of the Mabinogion by Charlotte Guest. He goes to Cornwall, but he goes to Cernir, which is between Cardiff and Newport, which again comes back to my theory that Arthur left, leaving the Duke of Cornwall to chase the Saxons. He left that way towards Newport and Cardiff, in order to head them off. When the intention was to chase them all the way around and finish them off at that point.
He's got to be making plans, hasn't he?
Mm.
He wouldn't have done it for nothing. Everything was done purposefully.
So yeah, it's interesting, but one of the frustrations is that how little actual written record there is, primary sources. There's not many. I mean, the oldest source is Gildas, and in the Gildas narrative, Arthur doesn't even get mentioned. He's not mentioned by name at all. It's only until you get to Nennius, a couple of 100 years later, that Arthur's name is mentioned. Now, the mainstream again have got lots of theories why Arthur's name was never mentioned. One of them being that he was so well known in that time that you didn't need to mention him. Everyone would know what you're talking about. And the other thing with Gildas is that he was within living memory of the battle. He was supposedly born 44 years. Yeah, he was writing 44 years after the battle, and he was supposed to be born, he says, 44 years earlier when the battle took place. So he's writing within living memory, people who were fought in battle were probably still alive, quite old, but you know, it was still fresh in the memory, if you like. So what you can draw from that is two things. One, there was definitely a Battle of Aden. You know, it's not a myth. It's not part of the Arthur legends or anything like that. You know, there was a Battle of Aden. Where it was, no one knows precisely now. But the second thing was, it was called always from day one. The very first mention of it in writing, it was always a siege, not just a straightforward battle. There was a siege was involved. So those are the two things that you can take from Gildas. And then when you get to Nennius, and then he's writing at the end of the 8th century, around about 790, 800. He's writing around about that period. So you're writing now about, so what was it, about 200 years. 200 years after the event. But again, it was obvious the way he's writing. It's a known story. It's fresh in the memory. People know all about it, and a bit more detail was added then. And then really nothing more was added until Geoffrey of Monmouth. And then Geoffrey of Monmouth was the starter where Arthur basically, the stories started to go wrong, because he introduced a lot of new elements into it, and it was more storytelling than history. You know, it was at that junction then. For after Geoffrey of Monmouth, everything that came after it was a romantic, literary version of the battle rather than a historical account of the battle. So really, when I'm looking at it, a lot of what Geoffrey of Monmouth says, I think, could be additions to it, but they would be additions from what was being the oral history, if you like, or the history that was known or been written before, and which we've since lost. But certainly after his point there, it becomes a more romantic view, and it becomes a more literary view, and it's and this is where you get all of the stories which, you know, don't fit in with the facts. Basically, it becomes a story and a legend rather than a history.
Have you got any more slides that we haven't seen that you think we ought to?
No. I think the main thing for me was is to just to look at the landscape and the land form, you know, and you can see that the rivers play an important part in Wales, and to this day, you know, you've got the Heads of the Valley Road. Well, you know, why is the Heads of the Valley Road there? You know, it was always a main transport corridor because of what it is. You know, you can go up and around. You'll be bypassing that whole central mountain range, mountain massif, or whatever you want to call it. And also, you can actually see, again, looking at where the battles are fought. You know, when at Baden, you know, look how close it is to the plain. You know, you're not up into the mountains. You're on the edge of the mountains and the plain.
And that's quite an interesting picture, the close proximity between Baden and Rusaisen. So yeah. So if the Saxons were after the plain, they would have headed that way, wouldn't they?
Well, yeah. At the end of the day, to my mind, you know, the Saxons were not coming here to get whatever settlement or fort or whatever was there, because, you know, that's not where the wealth is. They were coming after the wealth, and the wealth is the Vale of Glamorgan and the plain. Now, how they were planning to do that, this is where we can have hours of fun and amusement. So saying, were they coming from were they trying to take it from the mountains? Were they coming across here, and then they're going to come down the valleys and then push the Welsh off the edge of the plain into the sea? Now you can argue that's one way of doing it, but once you've got 100,000 men, one of the big things you have to do is feed them, and the food is going to be down on the plain. It's not going to be up in the hills.
Yeah.
You know, the 100,000 men up in the hills are only going to last so long. And the other thing that I think that could happen is, if the Saxons did ever take Cairo, Arthur, with his local knowledge of the hills and things like that, could very quickly block all their routes off. They could block all the valley routes. They could block all the ridge routes off with quite a small number of men, you know, in reality, and prevent them from getting any supplies in or out. So I think the whole thing was, to my mind, you know, I like the idea of a small force coming in and to get a larger force ensconced at Markham Sands, where they could come across here and take the plain.
That's where we're both in agreement on that point.
Yeah. And then, and if you look at what happened, that's exactly what the Romans did. They took the plain and pushed the Welsh up and put the natives back up into the hills. The Normans did the same, and neither the Normans or the Romans had a major presence up in the hills. They had routes going through it to get to other parts of Wales, but they didn't have huge settlements or anything like that, because there's no need for them. You would just have military settlements there guarding your routes to other parts of Wales. You know, that apart from the plain, the only other wealth in Wales at that time was probably the gold. You know, where you got the gold up in mid Wales.
Why would they build the big castle up in Cairo?
Well, I think the big castle is more to do with the Welsh defence. If ever they got pushed up into the hills, you know, Cairo, a big castle up in there, you're far enough from the plain. It would be very difficult for anyone who held the plain to come and get you, because they'd have to come up. It would be a difficult, you know, they'd have to have quite a lot of men behind them to take that from you. And it's just then a good base in order then to start harrying people, because, you know, when you look at it as well, you know, you're coming around here and you can come down to, you know, you can come down the valleys then to Rwsiaic. You've got opportunities to harry the people down in the plain.
I think you may be right. It is a base camp, and you had access. It's virtually the centre of Glamorgan when you think of it.
Yeah,
they can go anywhere. And if you look at Cairo itself, they're on a plateau of a mountain which runs all the way from Port Talbot, Aberafan, all the way over to Irvine.
Yeah, that's why, you know, joining your dots, you know, the dots follow the route of the British track, you know, all the way up there. You know, you're coming across on basically ridge lines, and you're taking the good route to get up there. And I say, once they started on that route, I don't believe they had any option. They were like on a railroad.
No, they were stuck on it.
They couldn't get off it, and they were just being pushed further and further up.
Because Duke of Cornwall sunk all their boats suddenly. So it's good. It's very good.
Like I said, I just put forward. I'm putting this forward just for discussion purposes, to try and open it up. So somebody out there, I keep on saying what we're trying to do is build a jigsaw, and we don't have the box with the pretty picture on it to see the jigsaw we're making. And I think people like Wilson and Blackheath have given us the edge of the jigsaw.
What a wonderful presentation, Bob. Thanks very much.
Yes.
So, Keith, would you like to respond to the information Bob has imparted?
Yes, I think it's the battle plan, a good battle plan. Yes, Arthur could have come from the east. I think it's quite sensible. But the definite thing is that the Saxons were forced, or willingly, or being pushed by the Duke of Cornwall up the British trackway. And they obviously went up to Irvine and then back down to Saxon, which I think Bob is right. I think Arthur was there, he met all the other kings, and they sorted them out. Thank you.
Dave, what's the military viewpoint of both presentations?
Well, but I agree with Bob a lot of what Keith was saying as well. And, you know, we're never going to know for sure, or we're probably not going to go for sure, but it's from what we see on the ground, what we think of from the art of war, the topography, the politics of wanting to take Arthur's fortress Glamorgan by the Saxons. It looks like they're establishing a bridgehead to the west of Arthur, maybe to encircle, maybe to take it straight away by direct assault. But they were held back. They were the initial bridgehead, if they were holding their main force back, was kept busy by the defences that were already there, long enough for Arthur to build up a really big force. Whether he came from the east, I tend to get the feeling that the Saxons were engaged around Baden area with those forts that were already there, and as is recorded in Rhonabwy, the three main characters that are buried in the area, like Lachan, that they were engaging with the Saxons while the main force landed, and then their plans were scuppered to get far in and to take Fortress Glamorgan, probably from the high ground or the low ground. We don't really know what went wrong with their plan there. But the landing area, the amount of sort of Saxon names in the ground, it's we're getting closer to it. There's all little bits coming together there. And if one person has a theory, not all of it will be right, and then another person's theory, some of that will be right, and we just keep forging ahead.
I fully agree with that. Is no one person knows the full story, and the more we talk about it, the more we, as I say, we're trying to ultimately come to some kind of consensus as the most logical course of action. You know, and to do that, you've got to look at all the different things and have a discussion and argue in a not in a antagonistic way, but in a constructive way. To actually see if we can put together a story which actually stacks up 100%.
Well, I think I've learned more today than I've learned from all the books I read of Wilson and Blackett. The two ideas you both put forward matched each other perfectly, I thought. It's just a case of either were they pushed or did they follow?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think you both made wonderful arguments. And I think the readers, the viewers, can make up their own minds now. And I think you've given them plenty of food for thought. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
What I would say, Paul, before you finish is, I want more than just make up their own mind. I want for them to tell us what they think, so that we can have another discussion. They can come up with a theory which matches the facts better than ours. I'm all for it. You know, let's have that discussion. You know, just don't sit there and make up your own mind. Yeah, actually, you know, come and tell us what you think.
That's brilliant. And on that note, thank you very much, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye then.
Thank you, gentlemen. As I said last week, Keith's remarkable detective work in producing the campaign hypothesis and the three men's work we've seen today discussing it have produced a serious body of work and may well be the cause of academia finally rewriting some part of the history of the people who call these islands home, and not forgetting the great work of Wilson and Blackett identifying the history to be rewritten in the first place. Now that we've seen part 2, you have to agree that huge progress has been made on this part of the historical record. Let's take a look at today's chat. And it more or less started out with Welsh Ripper asking, where was Pencastle? Well, hopefully you could see on Bob's maps that it's up the valley towards Cummer in a place called Caerau. There's quite a few Caerau's in Wales. And it's also near a place called Glencorrwg. David Church said that definitely stone that hasn't just fallen off a cliff. So now we're talking about Keith's presentation of stones that he picked up. Welsh Ripper thought the ovalish stone was a toilet seat. Yeah, the one with the cling film on. George Bodley wanted to put the stones under an infrared light to check for text on them. Great idea. And he asked if the stone could have been vitrified by the heat of the comet of 562 AD. Pointed out later that some vitrified stone on the upper levels of a Scottish hill fort, indicating that it's come from above, but not on the lower levels. David Church gave a good answer and said there is some red alabaster around coastal cliffs. There definitely is around Penarth, because I recently visited Insole House and Insole Gardens in Llandaff, and inside Insole House they have an alabaster fireplace carved from the local red alabaster of Penarth. Comet and vitrification of rocks drew quite a bit of discussion. Patrick said if it was a planet-sized comet, it could cause a tidal wave in the ground. Marshall asked Patrick if the 562 comet could have sunk Lioness. Patrick said if the events occurred in the same time scale, then it might have. Illuminati wondered if it wasn't a comet in 562 so much as an orbiting satellite that formerly revolved around ancient Earth and pockmarked the ground below when it broke up. Now, very interesting thought about a satellite orbiting the Earth that shouldn't be there. And there's one called the Dark Knight, and it traverses around the planet pole to pole, which is generally the opposite direction that humans put satellites up into the atmosphere or beyond the atmosphere, in space rather than the atmosphere, sorry. This so-called satellite, the Dark Knight, appears to look like a rock. Nobody knows really what it is. They've shot lasers at it or missiles from the ground. I think even the Nazis tried to do that, to bring it down, so to benefit from the technology that it might have held. And maybe the Russians tried it as well, because it's one explanation for what happened at Tunguska, the Dark Knight defending itself. That's all speculation, but it's worth checking out on Google and YouTube, things like that. Jeff Hunter says that Dr. Fraser Hunter is an acknowledged expert in seeing what ingredients show up in glazed surfaces from comet passings overhead, no doubt. Derek Moores wondered if the names of fields reflected the course of the battle up on Mynydd Baden. I think they do. I think the books by Alan Wilson and Barham Blackett say they talked with local people, and the lady in the farmhouse gave the name of Field of Tents, Lower Battlefield Farm, for example. Field of Battle, Maes Cadlaw, was another one. Volcanic activity was discussed in detail. Rich DJ said that the whole evening was a great discussion, and Gary Taylor agreed. Derek Moores questioned what archaeological evidence there is for the battle upon Baden. Well, there's still entrenchments there, there's burial mounds. I don't know what artefacts they may have dug up, but people could go up there with permission of the farmer, with their metal detectors maybe. Marshall asks why academia can't be as logical in their approach as our three speakers were this evening. And she said this sort of assessment is exactly what our history needs. David Church asked about a particular feature on the map. That would be the one down at the River Ogmore, where the castle stands. David Church asked, wasn't the River Severn flowing northwards in 551? Interesting. Jeff Hunter pointed out the difficulty in sizing the number of combatants in medieval battles. And even the burial mounds would be difficult to talk about in terms of numbers of people buried, because they may not have been buried. They may have been piled high there and put on funeral bier and collectively burnt. So what you have then is the site of the Great Pyre, maybe. I don't know, because I've never dug into one. Meg W. loved the chat today, found it engrossing. And I think the live show, being the opportunity for the live chat, is a marvellous opportunity for us all to get together and air our views and join with Bob in supplying alternative views from the views put forward by the speakers. Marshall Abrahams explained why Gildas, being a Roman Catholic monk, was no fan of the Britons. And he didn't mention Brutus either. And that explains why Arthur was not mentioned, maybe. So the chat is still going on. James Jameson has just come in. You have to watch the replay, James. Crumlin Burrows, according to David Church, could be a little bit too far west. I think that was explained in part one why Crumlin Burrows was the first place that landings took place, on account of protection from two rivers either side of it. So as we near the end of the show, we'll put Arnie on again, and you'll have to agree, he is making great progress. So Arnie, last two video productions. Thank you, Arnie. And we conclude the live chat, so it gives you a chance to say au revoir to people, even whilst some people are still saying hello. We'll close the show with some photographs. The music comes supplied by Microsoft on account of the fact that I've had trouble with my videos with music. And I absolutely love promoting talent of the people we know. But YouTube don't like the fact that I've used other people's music, and they won't let us monetize our videos, which is important for generation of funds for the research, etc., and the promotion of the books. So that because they're doing that, and it doesn't seem to have a rhyme or reason to it, because in the early days of the live shows that I did, I put on Stephen Preston's YouTube music, for instance, and that was allowed to be monetized. Strange. But at the minute, it's hit and miss whether or not we get monetized, so I'm leaving it out. But nevertheless, another 5 minutes now to watch some of my photographs of places mentioned in the Wilson and Blackett books, etc. I suppose this is a good time to remind everybody that the books are available from www.cymroglyphics to purchase, and they need buying up because they are running out of the production has ended and the supplies are running out. Get your copy while you can. So here's some photographs with background music. Lots of people saying how much they've enjoyed this evening, and I've enjoyed myself too. Well, that's it for today almost. Before I finish, Gary Taylor asked the question, are there any new books scheduled? I take that you mean Wilson and Blackett books. Good question. We are planning to hold Zoom meetings to see how we can develop and get something else published. So it's no easy feat, unfortunately. And there's a lot of typing needed as well. I know Ross was getting a lot of people together to undertake the typing. Margaret and my wife and myself. Margaret was typing, I was proofreading. We did quite a bit. We've got ideas about putting the books out as audiobooks, and certainly the digital book that recently was last published, the Odyssey, the original Odyssey, that would make an ideal audiobook. So yeah, watch this space. No news yet, other than Marshall Abrahams should have her book published soon. No doubt Marshall can update us on that one. So that's it for today then. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed our time together. I know I did. Thank you to Angela and the boys, and to all the volunteers working behind the scenes on both group media platforms. They're different people for the Facebook and the YouTube channel. So it's auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, ciao, nos da, and see you next time. And remember, seek and you will find.
Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it informative. Britain's Hidden History Group has so much more going on our YouTube channel. The one you're watching now, there's a live stream, 8 o'clock UK time every Sunday. We speak to people like Wilson and Blackett, reprint their old books and help produce new ones. We go researching to the tops of mountains all the way down to the bottoms of caves. Busily recording the books, you can listen to them as well, and looking at mysteries and working out what we're not being taught in schools and preserving it, because the physical and written evidence is rapidly disappearing. You can also find out how to read ancient writing and hieroglyphs using the Welsh language. It's amazing. There's a Facebook group where this is being discussed. Along with a website, you can buy the books and help us. Also, as you can see, there's now a Patreon page where just a few pounds a month will make all the difference in trying to keep the project going and preserve this history for future generations, and also to find out for ourselves what is going on, what is Britain's hidden history. So until the next time, Heddiw!